lovelies. Hello, black sheep. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Jenna. I'm a psychic medium. I'm an intuitive tarot reader, cosmetologist, and author of 2 published books. Link in the description if you would like to check those out. So on today's episode of the podcast, we are going to be discussing your calling. Do you know what that is? Have you got any sort of inkling or clue what it is that you are on this planet to do? Well, if not, you've come to the right place, because today we're going to be discussing how you go about figuring out what your calling actually is. So, first topic. What is a calling? What is that, right? So your life's calling is what makes you feel that life is meaningful. So what in your life do you have that's maybe a hobby, an interest, something that is a passion project, or something that you're excited to do? It brings you a lot of joy and happiness when you actually engage in these activities. It's something that helps you to live a purposeful life. Callings look different for everyone, so maybe what somebody does for their calling is not a good fit for you. We all have something that we're here to do. So some of what we do for our calling helps others as part of their calling. They strive to make a positive impact on others' lives, and some spend their life on passions. Think of an athlete, right? They spend hours and hours working out, refining their crafts, refining their skills, maybe building up muscles in different parts of their body, things like that. And so them spending all that time training to be their very best makes their life meaningful. So whatever your calling is, use your skill, talents, and abilities to align with your values. So our calling helps us to express ourselves and give us a sense of purpose. So my calling is to be a healer, a spiritual teacher, and to share knowledge. And so I use my mediumship abilities to help make meaningful connections to those that have passed on the other side to the living world, and to pierce the veil and to see through that and to be able to communicate those messages effectively. So that's part of my calling. Part of the reason why I use tarot is because it can gain insight to maybe something that's unseen or a subconscious level, and it also helps to give the person I'm reading for a visual cue. So my purpose behind all of my readings, whether it's a intuitive tarot reading or a mediumship reading, is always to facilitate healing. So I am not healing you. The messages hopefully will give you tools or insight on things that you need to work through or you need to work on. So our calling is something that helps us have a sense of purpose. It helps us to express ourselves, and ultimately these things will help us live authentically. So that's the name of the game going forward, is that once we do any sort of number of things for inner healing, working through obstacles and issues, we start to align with our purpose, our calling, the reason for being here. And hopefully by the time we get to that point, we've learned a little bit, we've navigated through life's challenges and ups and downs, because there's always something in the mix. But finding your calling also lets you to enter a flow state. So what is a flow state? Well, a flow state is where you focus so intensely that you barely notice that time is going by. So have you ever been out with your best friend and you're having fun and things are just flowing very well? Maybe the conversation's great. Maybe, you're doing activities that you all enjoy. And so you start to get into this flow state where time just kind of accelerates and it kind of passes by effortlessly. So being in a flow state is actually a really good thing. It means that you are on the right path, because otherwise we tend to face obstacles or challenges. So it makes work less work, and it's good for your well-being. So one of my favorite quotes about that is to find a job that you love. That's something that you're passionate about, something that you love to do, and find a way to make money at it, and you'll never work another day in your life. So Mark Twain and Confucius. So how do you find your calling, right? All this talk about it's great, but how do you actually know what your calling really is? Well, there's quizzes you can take online and things like that. But ultimately, you need to sit with, what are your passions? What are things that excite you enough to get you out of bed in the morning? What are activities that you enjoy? What are things that make you feel like you have a purpose behind it? And those could be some clues on how to find your actual calling. So keep in mind that your calling might not just fall into your lap either. But here are some tips on how you can find yours. So number one is listen to your intuition, or as I like to call it, your internal GPS. It's your guidance system. It's your navigational tool to realize something's either really good for me and it feels good, or something is really bad for me and I should totally avoid that and stay away from that. So get out there and get out of your comfort zones. That's number two. So when I first started doing personal readings for people, the biggest hurdle that I had was overcoming being shy and awkward, as well as fear. So I had to face my fears, and I had to remove the fear and find my courage in order to open my intuition. And I have to use my intuition in order to channel for people and do mediumship readings. And so there's still times where I feel really awkward on camera, or that I feel like I don't measure up. Doubts and fears and all those things, they block your intuitive abilities. And so we have to make sure that we're removing fear and stepping out of these comfort zones, right? Breaking these cycles that aren't good for us. So how does your body feel when you're trying new things? Check in with yourself. Does it feel exhilarating and you're excited to do it? Are you fearful? Are you having doubts? Are you feeling like this isn't a good fit for you? Check in with your body, and how does it feel when you try new things? We should all try new things at different points in our life, all throughout our life. We're overcoming challenges, learning new things, expanding our horizons. But we also need to make sure that if something doesn't feel right to us, that we maybe try something else and go in a different direction. The other thing is, are you willing to learn new things on your own? Because finding your purpose and your calling might require you to not only step out of a comfort zone, but to actually learn new skills. And so no matter what age you're at, I was 40 when my gifts really kind of amplified and awoke to what they are now, and they've grown over the last several years. So it could be quite a learning experience. Maybe you require some sort of further education. Maybe you have to go to college. Maybe you need a degree. Maybe you need to read books on the subject. Maybe you need hands-on learning. Whatever that happens to be willing to learn and try new things in order to actually learn. Pay attention to dreams that you're having. Things might seem like a coincidence. I'm a firm believer that it's divine intervention or synchronicities. It's never a coincidence. So if you start noticing like, hey, I keep hearing about ... Hey, I really want to try this, and so was just talking about that exact thing. When I was thinking about starting this podcast, I came across, I kid you not, probably 6 videos in the matter of a half an hour that were all talking about starting a podcast. And I thought, okay, that's a green light. That's something that I want to share knowledge, and that's what the purpose of this podcast is to share knowledge, to expand your horizons so that you can learn from experiences, maybe mine or other people's, and that you can actually apply some of those things or that knowledge to some area of your life and use it for some sort of insight or to move past an obstacle. So what about self-expression, right? So what feels right? When you express yourself, does it feel right? Does something feel off? And really kind of figure out what is a good energy and what is a negative energy. And then you need to reflect as well. So you've got to contemplate, Sometimes it can be really difficult going towards your calling. I left a career doing hair. I was a cosmetologist. I'm still licensed, but I no longer work in a salon due to many injuries, and it wasn't where I was supposed to be forever. So it's skills that I learned. There's things that I still take away from that that help me in my everyday world now. But your career sometimes isn't your calling either. And so you might have a career and you might have something totally different that's your calling. So be open to that. So reflect on things that you loved as a kid. What were some things that you really enjoyed as a child? Because I believe that when we incarnate here, we have a soul contractor. We have kind of this timeline that we come in on, that there's things we want to achieve, things we want to learn, experiences we want to have. And so as a child, you might have had curiosity about certain things or really enjoyed different aspects of things you tried. So what were those things, and what does that make you feel like now? Do you still have that same spark of creativity or excitement and passion for it? Or was that something that maybe fizzled out because you outgrew it? Those might be some things to look at and reflect on. What did you really love, and is it still the same, or have things changed for you? Prioritize wellness in your life. This is a big one for a lot of us. So as a spiritual person, as a healer, as an empath, as a medium, as a psychic, we tend to be kind of like sponges for the energy around us. So it's crucial for people that have that skill set to make sure that they prioritize their own self-care, self-love, emotional things that, maybe we did a reading for somebody and it was really dramatic, or there was a lot of imagery that, sticks with me and things like that. Or maybe it was just a real knee-jerker, lots of surprises or lots of things that were really heavy things that came through, because that can happen too. Whatever the case might be, make sure that you are prioritizing your own mental, physical, and emotional well-being. You are responsible for that, nobody else. So if things are lackluster, if things are struggling, do what you need to do. Seek help if that's something that you feel like you need to do, and make sure that you get those things back on track. I would say implement self-love and self-care practices on at least a weekly basis. And if you can do more, do more. But definitely take some time for yourself so that you can feel at your best in order to take on some of these challenges. Limit distractions. That can be a difficult one as well. So I feel like I work from home and I have 2 dogs that bark all the time. Sometimes the kids are home, off of school or off of work, things like that. Phones ringing, doorbells going off, neighbors' dogs barking, right? There's always some sort of distraction. So can you carve out a little bit of time to limit those? Sometimes I will stay up really late at night just to be able to have peace and quiet in the house to work on things. Or I try and make sure that my schedule is set up where I have at least 2 days a week that the house is pretty much quiet and that I can work on what I need to work on. So carve out a space or carve out some time every single day or every single week where you can limit distractions and focus on what it is you need to focus on. And unplug from social media. Obviously, we want you to watch the podcast episodes, but sometimes we're on social media far too much. And that didn't used to be the norm. I come from one of the last generations where we know what the world's like without all the technology, without all the computers and cell phones and social media. And I've also seen it take over. And I'm guilty of it too, because I use social media to promote my business. I use social media for my videos, for my podcast. So it is a crucial part of my job. But it also sometimes becomes overwhelming. And so I will take some time off as well. Maybe not post as many videos, maybe, spend more time outside in nature, which will be a lot easier once the weather improves. But sometimes we need to remember to just unplug, right? That we don't have to spend all of our waking free time online. And so I would encourage you to spend some time out in nature, get some fresh air and sunlight, maybe take a walk. As the weather improves wherever you live in the world, maybe you get out and you dig in the earth. I do gardening in the spring and the summertime. So whatever works best for you, but make sure that you are not spending 100% of your free time on social media. It can be detrimental to your mental as well as physical health. So another option would be journaling, to record your thoughts. So maybe you kind of write a pro and a con list. Maybe there's some things that come to mind that make you think of things you enjoyed as a child, or things that are just a no for you. That it's like, there's no way that's what I'm supposed to do because I hate doing that. So there could be lots of things that come to mind. So journal and record your thoughts and notice if there's any sort of patterns. If the same topic keeps coming up, that's like, yeah, I'd really like to, explore that further. So maybe investigate that. I have been fascinated with, the spiritual realm, the other side, heaven, all of that, angels, different, entities, energy beings, things like that, ghosts, the paranormal, since I was very, very small. There was one pesky problem with that. I was always terrified of death and dying. So I couldn't imagine as a small child that I would do what I do today, which is talk to dead people, because I was terrified of death and dying. I'm not anymore, because this gift has taught me that we exist beyond this earthly plane, and that once we leave our vessel, our physical body, our soul exists infinitely. So there should be no fear attached to death and dying, because our essence of who we are will continue on forever. So while we might change shapes or forms, we are always still us in the grand scheme of things. So another element would be spending time outdoors, whether that's maybe you take a walk, maybe you ride a bicycle, maybe you attend a concert outdoors, but do something that is outside instead of just constantly being on your phone and indoors 100% of the time. We need that, natural, good, feel-good chemicals that we get from sunlight. We need fresh air. It helps us to improve mind, body, and soul. And deep breathing exercises, especially outdoors, can actually energize all of your chakras, and it'll help to balance them, as well as remove some sort of negative energy that could be stuck, could be sitting there. So follow your values. So do you have a belief system? Do you have a moral compass? I would hope that you are ethical and that you do things in an ethical way. But what are your values? What are some things that are important to you? For me, it was about helping people, and that was something that I felt extremely drawn to with being a medium. Is I feel like leaving a positive impact on people is one of the greatest things that I could do. And so my goal is always to leave someone better than I found them, especially doing a reading. So I feel like you need to align with your values in order to really fulfill your calling. So think about skills that you can share. What can you teach somebody else how to do? That's the purpose of this podcast. And so I feel like we all have some sort of tidbit of knowledge that we've acquired somehow over our lifetime, and that we might really need to focus on what those skills or skill sets are, tools and knowledge, so that we can share those in some capacity. Maybe you make videos, maybe you have a small class that you teach, maybe you write a book, whatever it happens to be. There's definitely some form of knowledge that you can share. And be patient. Understand that it's a journey. So it took several months to really kind of hone in my mediumship skills where I felt like I could use them. And then over the years, things kind of amplified or expanded from where I first started out. And I feel like you can be frustrated when things don't progress as quick as sometimes we want them to. Your calling's going to be there for you no matter what. It's yours. It's what you're meant to do. But you have free will, so you can choose when you do this or if you do this. And so I feel like you really have to be patient and understand that it's a journey. It's not about the destination. You're going to get where you need to be. It's about how you get there. And that's the important part. So listen to advice of others if they see your calling before you do. Some people just know. It's like they can look at you and go, you know what you would be really, really good at? And I've had people in my past tell me, you have a healing anointing on you. It's something you're called to do. And I always felt that. When I was a small child, I thought about being a nurse. Again, my reservation for not doing that was I didn't want to experience death and dying on a regular basis, and I knew that that was something that was a possibility in that line of work, so I ended up not doing that. But science fascinated me, healing fascinated me, and so that wasn't a good fit for me. That was something that even though I thought I would do well in that, it was something that I just wasn't comfortable being in that situation, so I went in a different direction. So, how to find your calling in your career or not? So work can be just that, work. It could just be a job. It could be something that helps you to pay your bills, but it's not something that you're really passionate about, or it's not something that leaves you feeling fulfilled like your calling might. So for some, career can also be your calling. So for me, I'm fortunate enough that I created this business so that I can use my calling, and sometimes it pays the bills, but most of the time it's just done because it needs to be done. So in some cases, people can integrate their calling into their work. Some people do it full time, like being a teacher. Sometimes people are really great at explaining certain subjects, especially if they're passionate about it. I had a history teacher in, I want to say it was probably freshman year in high school, and he was phenomenal. He loved history. He showed us different viewpoints. We got to do a lot of stuff that had to do with movies or documentaries, and so it made it more exciting. I wasn't the type of person that would want to sit back and read a textbook and memorize dates of wars and battles and all those things. So if you can breathe new life into something that you're passionate about and get other people excited about learning, I think that makes an excellent teacher. So sometimes, however, the two don't always line up, and that can be the way that it is for a lot of people. So maybe you have an IT job, but your passion is in art. Maybe you want to sculpt, maybe you want to paint. Maybe you're somebody who is super creative, and the career path that you have doesn't necessarily reflect that. So what do you do when you've found your calling, right? What do you do after the fact? What happens once you've found your calling, and kind of how do you really go forward and actually follow your calling? So number one, you have to have courage, right? And that was my biggest thing, is fear. I had to overcome doubt. I had to overcome fear so that I could hear my guides, so that I could actually send the messages or regurgitate what I was picking up. So be brave and go forward. So don't let fear hold you back from something that could end up being life-changing for you or for somebody else. And take good advice, but do what's best for you. So maybe your Uncle Harry tells you, hey, you should do this. You should come work for the family car company or something. And you're like, that's really not where I want to be. I want to be on Broadway. Maybe you want to do musicals. Maybe you want to act, things like that. So take good advice and take note. Remember, sometimes we have to take it with a grain of salt. It just might not be a good fit for us, and that's okay too. You just have to realize the difference. So the other thing is to stick to it. Remember that growth comes with a lot of challenges, a lot of detours on your path, but mistakes are learning experiences. So even if you feel like you've made a lot of mistakes in your life, remember that it taught you something. So take the lesson and learn to grow from that experience. And don't feel rushed. Take your time. Your calling is your calling, and it's not going anywhere. It's going to be there when you are ready to actually follow through and to be able to take the first step towards that calling. And be proud of yourself. Make sure that you acknowledge all of the little milestones or the achievements after like starting your calling and getting into it, because I feel like sometimes we don't acknowledge how far we've come on our journey, and we need to make sure that we're celebrating the small wins as well. So don't forget all the hard work that you put into it, and make sure that you acknowledge your efforts. So let this guide you. You have your whole life to meet like-minded people and explore interests related to you and newfound life purpose. All right, well, Jenna, all that stuff's great, but what happens when, you find your calling? Like, what does that feel like to actually find your calling? It means that you feel called to your work, irresistibly drawn towards it. So it's going to be something that you just feel like you have to do it. Not that you have to, like it's a chore, but that you have to because you're just drawn to it. You just cannot wait to start it. And that was something that in the beginning for me, I was so excited. I could not wait to start reading for people. I couldn't wait to see what Spirit showed me during a personal reading. And I really enjoyed getting to learn all of these different mechanisms or different ways that Spirit would communicate. And I loved being able to show people that Spirit is super real and that it lives on past the physical realm. And by making meaningful connections to Spirit, I was able to show people exactly how, we were able to make connections. So for me, it was super meaningful just to be able to show people it is real. It's nothing to fear, and your people, whoever it is, are always still very much a part of your life. So to find your calling and career, explore your interests, your values, your strengths, and your weaknesses, and how they align with your goals. So maybe there's something that you feel drawn to, but maybe you realize that it's not a good fit. It doesn't align with who you are and what you value. So that's something really important too. You wouldn't want to be trying to make something fit where it doesn't fit, right? No round pegs and square holes, things like that. So go towards what fits and what feels like it's aligned. And be willing to make changes. Sometimes we have to change course, so do that if it's necessary. If something isn't a good fit down the line, you have free will. You can change course. Maybe a job you're at is sucking the life out of you and you thought it was your calling. If it's not, that's okay. You're going to change direction where it's needed so that you can actually find your purpose and your calling and why you're here. So what goals do you have? What goals do you want to achieve? And how do your interests and values align with those goals? So I feel like you probably have an inkling of maybe what your calling or your purpose is. What are common interests that maybe you have? Maybe it's something really out of the box. Maybe you want to be a paranormal investigator. Maybe you want to be, America's Next Top Model. Whatever it happens to be, figure out what it is that interests you. And then, are things in alignment? Are there some things that maybe need to change? Maybe it's inside, maybe it's outside. And what are some things that you can do to align with those goals? So, have you found your calling yet? And if not, are you working towards that calling? Are there some things that you need to maybe change or a different direction to explore? Where will it take you? And how will you get there is totally up to you. If you have an idea for our podcast, please feel free to email me. It's in the description box of all the videos. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please email me. Let me know what your topic of discussion is. And if I feel like it's a good fit for our Black Sheep Society, I will reach out to you through email and coordinate so we can film an episode. Have a wonderful week.